Halloween is a strange time of year, a time when mysterious things happen and we wake up thinking, was it really all just a dream? Halloween of 1972 saw the planets align and secret whispered schemes bear fruit, as an intercompany crossover of the subtlest kind briefly swept past our eyes like a shadow. Let's sink our teeth into it. For Halloween, I wanted to do something a bit different. So I thought I'd bring the show here, to Salem, Massachusetts, a place synonymous with witchcraft and dark forces. But then I thought, no, that's ridiculous. So I just got this candle instead. History is always being amended, isn't it? For example, this very show once told you all that the very first crossover featuring Marvel and DC superheroes was 1976's Superman versus The Amazing Spider-Man. This show also went on to state that that wasn't the two publishers' first collaboration, that they had worked together on the previous year's release, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. But it seems there was a superhero crossover before that fateful meeting between Big Blue and the Webhead, a collaboration before that trip to the Emerald City, unofficially. It came about as an agreement between the writers involved after they attended a Halloween parade in Rutland, Vermont. The parade had built a reputation due to its tradition of featuring people dressed as superheroes from both Marvel and DC, and this made the writers think, what if some of the heroes in Rutland were genuine? And so they hatched their secret plan. It's difficult to know where to start for reasons that will become clear. So let's start arbitrarily here with issue 16 of Amazing Adventures featuring the Beast, released in October, naturally, 1972. A couple of years prior to this, the X-Men had released their last issue of original material for what would turn out to be 5 years. The team just wasn't popular enough, but Hank McCoy, aka the Beast, had always had charm in Spadefalls, so roughly a year before this was released, he went solo and took over the Amazing Adventures title from the Inhumans, turning furry in the process. I don't think you need to know much more for now, other than the writer and the first of our co-conspirators is a man who became very busy in the 70s, Steve Englehart. The artist is the rarely talked about Bob Brown. As you can see from the cover, it's Halloween, and is that Spider-Man and members of the Avengers and Fantastic Four I see? No, it isn't. Well, this first page is certainly going for the spooky vibe. Even the Beast looks more beastly than usual, so much so that he terrifies some passing motorists. Now, believe it or not, you've actually heard of these motorists. They are on their way to the Halloween parade in Rutland, Vermont, and as they get out to investigate this mysterious creature that caused them to veer off the road, they rather kindly use each other's first names. The only female of the group refers to one of the guys as Len, and he refers to her as Glynis. And it is no coincidence that the colourist for this issue is Glynis Wein. Who could Len be? The third member of the group is called Jerry, and the fourth is Steve. Yes, Steve Englehart, the writer of this issue. Our creatives are on their way to visit someone in Rutland called Tom Fagan. Tom is another real-life person, and he's the guy that, for many years, organised that Halloween parade in Rutland. So, we know why they are on their way up to Vermont, but what about the Beast? Well, actually, this issue falls halfway between one of the Beast's storylines. It started in the previous issue of Amazing Adventures and finishes in issue 161 of The Incredible Hulk. However, let's not worry about that for now. Let's focus on this Halloween parade. The Beast dons his more human disguise, meets back up with his love interest, Vera, and tells her that he thinks he's found a ride for them. Steve Englehart explains that they have driven that far from New York. The muffler has fallen off his car, and he also says to Hank, doesn't he know him? A little wink there from Steve to us. Hank says he doubts it, but tells him that his name is Hank McCoy, and Steve says, well, it does sound familiar. All right, Steve, stop winking now. And he says he's happy for Vera and Hank to squeeze in, After all, he doesn't want to leave anybody on their own in Rutland on Halloween. Squeeze in? Hank must be a pretty big guy. Nonetheless, as you've probably seen, as our hero drives off, the villain of the piece enters the scene. Falling from some interdimensional portal, he says, "I'm back on Earth. I'm free of that stinking cosmos eternity tossed me into. Do you hear me, Earth? The Juggernaut is back." Right, okay. In issue 33 of the X-Men, the Juggernaut grabbed the ruby of however you pronounce it. Its mystic emanations then sent him to the realm of nightmare. Then, after crossing paths there with Doctor Strange in issue 182 of his comic, he was banished to oblivion. And now strange forces have mingled to send him back home. Well, Vermont anyway. But not for long, because before it even closes, that portal sucks him back in and sends him back to that strange dimension. In a slightly less strange location, our writers have arrived in Rutland. They are going to continue on to a party at Tom Fagan's house, but they stop to drop Hank and Vera off in the downtown area where preparations for the parade are in full swing. Despite Vera warning Hank that if they don't get to Canada within a week, the world will end, he still wants to check out the Halloween parade. As the parade gets underway, we see that the creatives are back in town. Who knows what happened to the party? And actually, getting into the spirit of things, Glynis has changed into a familiar-looking superhero outfit. As they are talking to Hank, behind him, in the midst of the parade, reappears the Juggernaut. However, after briefly causing havoc, he is once again sucked back into that portal and to that other dimension. Although he does say that this time he was there longer, and as midnight approaches, his visits will get longer and longer. So the threat has gone, and so has Glynis. Her colleagues and Hank set out to search for her. And actually, owing to the nature of the Halloween parade, Hank is able to ditch his human disguise and comfortably be himself without drawing undue attention. Actually, Hank is only pretending to look for Glynis. In reality, he is searching for the Juggernaut, and unfortunately, he finds him. The unstoppable villain is deposited once more, this time right in the path of the beast. And there's no prizes for guessing what happens next. Owing to the nature of both of these two combatants, we get a nice, dynamic fight. Having struggled to defeat the Juggernaut even when he was with his mutant teammates, the beast knows he is a bit out of his depth. He says he's got to quit acting as though it's preordained for him to come out on top. We then get a good chase sequence as the beast tries to stay ahead of the Juggernaut, tries to outrun him, outleap him, even outswim him. But none of it works. Despite his massive size, the Juggernaut's mystic powers won't let him sink. As I recall, that doesn't quite work with wet concrete, but that's a story for another day. Finding himself outside Tom Fagan's house, the beast decides to hide at his party. A little bit reckless. Hank does have his human disguise to wear though, and he is greeted at the door by Tom Fagan himself. But not far behind is the Juggernaut. It seems his disguise is no use, as the Juggernaut can follow his emanations. Whatever that means. Hank runs upstairs, but there's no way out. And now the Juggernaut is there. He says, the mighty beast, reduced to a quivering coward. He's right as well. That's not very impressive. He says, why don't you stand up, beast, and face death face to face? Hank agrees, but of course, to do that, he needs to take his mask off. His sudden beastly appearance causes the Juggernaut to pause, and a pause is all the beast needs. Using a combination of his strength and agility, he tears the Juggernaut's helmet from his head. Now, I always thought we were told that the Juggernaut's helmet protected him from psychic attacks. Here, its removal has very different consequences. For a start, having been kicked down the stairs by the beast, he says that the helmet's removal has stolen his powers and has doomed him. That's a bit melodramatic. The beast says, "Cut the melodramatics, Jug. See, I told you." Before their battle is actually interrupted by the three writers looking for Glynis Ween. A panicking Juggernaut then races outside and attempts to steal the first car he comes across. Unfortunately for him, it's Steve Englehart's scrap heap, and he can't even get the thing started. This gives the beast an opportunity to, let's say, remove him from the vehicle, and after a decidedly one-way brawl, we see another consequence of Juggernaut losing his helmet. When the Juggernaut was in that other dimension, it had an effect on him. It aged him prematurely. Hatred was an antidote. It kept him young. Now, as a result in the change of the balance of power between him and the beast, that hatred has become fear. The antidote has been lost. And now he will return to the other dimension to finish aging and die. In more positive news, Glynis has returned. Len asks her where she was, but she has no recollection, although she does think that she had a good time. Jerry tells her about the trouble they had trying to find her, and she basically tells him to chill out. She says Halloween's a night for cutting loose and having fun, although we see that the beast clearly is not having fun. He has found a very photogenic spot to stand, and we're told that he stands there until dawn, in the cold, cold dark, alone. Clearly going for a poignant ending there, but he doesn't have to be alone. Vera's back at the hotel, probably wondering where he is. Okay. So that feels very much like a one and done, doesn't it? And in a way it was. In another way, it wasn't. So let's move on to the Mighty Thor issue 207. This issue actually came out before that issue of Amazing Adventures, but it doesn't really matter that we're reading them out of order, because the events don't follow on in chronological order. Instead, they overlap each other. This time our writer and conspirator number 2 is one of Steve Englehart's passengers, Jerry Conway, that is. Our artist is, I haven't done this in ages, Big John Buscema, and Marie Severin is on hand once more to provide the portraits, although this one credits her with good works. Okay, whatever. So, wind the clock back a bit, because in this issue, the Rutland Halloween Parade is just getting started. The parade is underway, and who's there? Well, who isn't? We of course have a number of parade goers dressed as superheroes, with the Avengers being well represented. On the float behind them, it isn't, is it? And watching on, we see that our creatives are there too. They soon hop into Steve's car to go up to Tom Fagan's house, and they refer not only to the muffler that's fallen off of the car, but also the fact that they have already come across a beast. Arriving at Tom's house, the host greets them at the door dressed as Nighthawk. At the real Rutland parade, Tom Fagan made a habit of dressing as Batman. Now obviously that's not going to happen in a Marvel comic, so instead they went for the next best thing, which is Nighthawk. Our creatives sense that something is up with Tom, although Jerry puts it down to nerves. Although we see that in the shadows there is a figure who seems to exert some kind of uncanny influence over Tom. He asks Tom if the arrangements are going quickly, and Tom says yes, as he commanded. And the shadowy figure has a very old-fashioned way of speaking. And where's Thor in all this? It is his mag after all. Well, he now arrives, because he, the Lady Sif and Hildegard are searching for the Absorbing Man. They started battling in the previous issue, and Thor is using his hammer to track the villain down. And naturally, it has led them to Rutland. The Absorbing Man gets the drop on Thor by camouflaging himself against a tree, and then battle between the two is recommenced. Thor versus the Absorbing Man. How brilliant is that? And according to the cover, he's not even the main villain. Thor's two companions want to help him, but he insists this is a battle that he must win alone. And what a battle! Again, we are treated to a dynamic clash, this time between two heavy hitters. At one point, the Absorbing Man even manages to absorb the properties of Thor's hammer. That gives him an extra boost, which he uses to effectively create an earthquake. The creatives stop off at a diner for something to eat, whilst the floats that were damaged in Amazing Adventures get repaired. We see that Glynis is back in her superhero outfit, and she goes off to powder her nose. But after 20 minutes, Len notices she still hasn't returned, and he wonders if something's wrong. 20 minutes in the bathroom. She could be, But no, it turns out she isn't there. She's gone missing, and the writers set out to find her. That little earthquake that the Absorbing Man caused sent both him and the Thunder God plummeting down into a subterranean vault. There we see that falling rocks have got the Thunder God pinned, and the Absorbing Man sees his opportunity to finish the fight. Thor isn't done yet though, and grabbing the villain by the ankle, uses his immense strength to launch him back out of the cave. Then, courtesy of his hammer, he frees himself from the debris, and in a classic reversal of fortune, heads back surfaceward to face his foe. A suitably thunderous blow sends the Absorbing Man flying into the nearby river, where he unintentionally absorbs the properties of the water, turning himself into liquid to be washed away. The battle is over. Thor is victorious. But his trials are not yet ended, because Loki is there, and he has brought with him two hounds of hell named Satan and Diablo. Now, Satan and Diablo were actually the names of Tom Fagan's dogs in real life, and that's who these are, transformed of course by Loki's dark magic. Now, on the command of their new master, they attack. There's a brief struggle, but they are soon dispensed with by Thor after he conjures up a whirlwind. But the threat isn't over yet, because Loki, that figure who is operating from the shadows at Tom Fagan's party, holds not only that party's host in his thrall, but all of the guests too. And he now uses the souls of those guests to power the fire sword, the weapon that he intends to use to end Thor's life. And of course, this leads to another conflict. And it's one that has some really interesting dialogue, particularly from Loki, as his envy over Odin's favouritism towards Thor is laid bare. Although in his eyes, that was down to Thor stealing their father's attention from him. Meanwhile, the Lady Sif is still desperate to help Thor, but Hildegard holds her back, reminding her this is a fight that Thor must win alone. Thou dost know it is so. Yeah, it said so on page 6. Then a new figure enters the story. This is Karnilla. She has travelled from Asgard because she is in search of Balder. She says to the Lady Sif that she wants her help to find him. If Sif agrees, then she will save Thor. But Sif resists, saying that if Thor should fall, he will do so a hero, rather than being some sorceress's unwitting puppet. But the battle isn't going well for Thor. He does manage to briefly disarm Loki, but he too has been disarmed, separated from his hammer. And this is during the period when, if Thor was separated from his hammer for too long, he would revert to his mortal guise of Don Blake. And that time is fast approaching. The sight of her love facing his doom pushes Sif to make a fateful decision. She agrees to help Karnilla, and in return, Karnilla brings the rains. This may not seem like much to you, but it's just what a thunder god needs. He says the rains revive his fading strength, enough that he can call his enchanted hammer to him, avoid reverting back to Don Blake at the most vital of times, and call down the lightning to destroy the fire sword. With the sword destroyed, the souls that it held captive are freed. But that's not all that's happened. Because that lightning bolt, striking so close to Loki, has robbed him of his sight. As for the creatives, they have also been caught in the storm. It would be a good time to shelter in Steve's car. However, they stand and watch helplessly as it's driven off, as Steve cries out that someone is stealing it. What, the Juggernaut? I didn't think he even got it started. As the car drives off, the blinded Loki staggers out into the road, attempting to flag it down. He not only fails in that, but in his panicked, headlong rush, he sends himself flying off the edge of the mountain road, presumably to his doom. It's at this point that Glynis turns up. She still doesn't know where she's been, although now she thinks she's beginning to remember. Although there is still no explanation, not in the pages of this comic anyway. So, a very dramatic ending for Loki, and the mystery around Glynis continues. Naturally, Thor's story continued into the next issue of his book, but Loki's actually continued into the Avengers Defenders War. Click on this link if you want to see more about that awesome event. Okay, so it's been a busy Halloween in Rutland. In the hills around the town, Thor has been battling assorted evils, and across the town itself, the Juggernaut has been popping up and causing chaos. Then there are all those other small but mysterious events, so far hinted at but unexplained. Well, there are going to be a few more events yet, and I think it's about time that we filled in those blanks. To do that, we leap the great divide between Marvel and DC, and we land squarely on issue 103 of the Justice League of America. Dix Dillon and Giordano are the artists on this one. No mention of Marie Severin. Fair enough, I suppose. She was on Marvel's payroll after all. The writer, well, it had to be, didn't it? The other guy that's been driven around by Steve Englehart all this time, and the third and final brain that dreamt up this crossover, Len Wein. You know the state that we're in, you even know the city that we're in, but we aren't at the parade just yet. Instead, we're at a crossroads just outside Rutland, where an annual ritual is about to take place. When the old clock tower tolls midnight, a woman called Mistress Sarah will speak to the spirits, and in turn those spirits will tell her the names of those that are due to die within the next 24 hours. Soon enough, the bell does begin to toll, and the names that pass Mistress Sarah's lips are those of the Justice League of America, as she confirms that these are the people who will die before the day is over. At that moment in time, 5 of the 6 people that she named are waiting for a meeting to begin in their orbiting headquarters. The 6th person is about to join them. That person is Batman, and his colleagues say it's about time that he arrived. After all, it was he that called the meeting. But he denies this, says it wasn't him that summoned them. So if it wasn't him, who was it? Well, the answer to that question is there among them. It is the Phantom Stranger. Most of the JLA don't know him, but Batman does, and he tells them to hear him out. The Phantom Stranger tells them that he's there to ask for their help, because this very day, Halloween, an old enemy of theirs, Felix Faust, is going to summon evil spirits across into the earthly realm. He is going to do this in our new favourite city, in Vermont, and he cannot stop them alone. No sooner has he delivered this message than he disappears. Superman knows the JLA's responsibilities well. What choice do they have? They are off to Rutland. Need I tell you that they aren't the only ones on their way to Rutland? Because it seems that on a lonely Vermont roadside, our creatives are having a little bit of car trouble, because the muffler has fallen off of Steve's car. The muffler mystery solved. They of course refer to Tom Fagan's party, of course talk about the parade, but also for the very first time they refer to Glynis Wein's costume as that of Supergirl. Meanwhile, the JLA are searching the Vermont countryside for signs of Felix Faust or anything else that is not of this world. So far they have turned up nothing, but they say really they need a base of operations to work from. And Batman, who attended the parade last year, says he knows just the place. The creatives arrive at Tom Fagan's house, where they find their host wearing the costume that he did usually wear in real life, which is that of Batman. But soon after, the real deal himself and his colleagues arrive. Batman asks Tom if they can base themselves at his home, and Tom, of course overjoyed at the request, says yes, but actually he has a favour to ask them. Len turns to his colleagues and says Julie will never believe me when I tell him about this. And yes, Julie is a man. In fact, he is Julius Schwartz, the then editor of the JLA comic book. The favour that Tom asks them is that if the JLA will feature in that year's Halloween parade. And as we can see from the next page, being the nice guys that they are, they said yes. So, wait a minute. Batman, Superman, standing like that? So that means that in Thor, these Superman and Batman lookalikes that we saw in the background, they weren't parade goers in costumes. They were the real deal. So Thor, issue 207, was the first Marvel comic to feature a full appearance of DC superheroes. My life will never be the same. The parade hasn't been running for long when our heroes discover that the rest of the floats have all vanished. Not that the watching crowd seem to have noticed. Clearly, this is Faust's handiwork, and the team decide to split up to scour the countryside for signs of him. And now the fun really begins. The Flash obviously is putting in plenty of legwork until he is tripped over by Captain America's shield? Almost. That projectile actually belongs to someone calling himself Commando America. It's a completely different character. And Glynis? Is that you? They, along with the Adam Strange analogue, attack the Flash and Hawkman. Actually, Adam Strange doesn't last very long, quickly being taken down by the Flash. But he then, in turn, is knocked out by Commando America's shield. The Commando, by the way, who we are told moves with almost equal speed to the Flash. No disrespect, Cap, or Commando, whatever you're calling yourself, but I doubt it. Commando America is then attacked by birds, the work of Hawkman. But he has problems of his own, as our fake Supergirl takes him out of the action. He, as he falls from the sky, tearing the blonde wig from Glynis's head. Our three fake heroes then believe that their work is done, and they vanish from the scene. The Phantom Stranger briefly gives our two real heroes hope of rescue, but instead he takes something from them both and leaves them to die. So who's next? Batman and Green Lantern, that's who. Batman has his hands full with someone that he refers to as a bargain basement web-slinger, who he says has all the powers of the real thing. How would he know? They don't even meet for another 23 years. Whatever powers he does have, he doesn't have the original's witty banter. Batman actually seems to be struggling against him, but Green Lantern is on hand, no pun intended, to help him out. So the fake Spider-Man is down, but he wasn't alone, because it's Thor to the rescue, who they refer to as a poor man's version of the Norse thunder god. Bearing in mind that Marvel didn't actually invent the concept of Thor, Batman probably could have called him that, couldn't he? Whatever he's called, his hammer soon takes care of Green Lantern, but then Batman takes him down. Now you may have thought that the Flash and Hawkman were beaten a bit too easily. After all, they weren't exactly beaten to a pulp. But their opponents, these fake superheroes, these parade goers, have been possessed by the evil spirits brought to Earth by Felix Faust, and they have extra powers. Their very touch drains a person of their life force, and that is about to happen to Batman. All it takes is a boot in the face, a boot apparently from Robin, but it's enough. Batman is down, the evil spirits have won again, and once more the Phantom Stranger is there to take something from the scene. Then Felix Faust himself explains a bit more about what's going on. He says that unless all 6 Justice Leaguers perish at the stroke of midnight, the demons that he has summoned will have to return whence they came. We suffer a little bit of deja vu, as Len, Steve and Jerry ponder the fact that Glynis has gone missing, but at least this time we know where she is. Meanwhile, yeah, fake Shazam versus Superman. And as fake as he is providing a real test for the last son of Krypton. Green Arrow has the Flash to deal with, the original Flash, kind of, and he makes a very poor decision to use an oil slick arrow, because all that does is guarantee that the Flash is going to slam right into him. And so yes, GA is down. The two strongest guys in the room are still at it, and it takes Shazam to summon a bolt of magic energy to tip the scales in his favour. And Big Blue is down, and once again, the Phantom Stranger is close to hand. The writers are still searching for Glynis, and after returning to Tom Fagan's house, they decide to search upstairs. And now the 24 hours is up as midnight approaches and the bell begins once more to chime. Again, with each chime, the name of a hero is repeated. But this time, the Phantom Stranger is there, and as the names are spoken, he tosses something belonging to that person to the wind. Our heroes recover, and they're not happy with the Phantom Stranger, believing that he betrayed them. He didn't save them when he could. But the truth is very different. All 6 members of the JLA had been enchanted by a spell of imminent death. The only way to counteract that spell was for the Phantom Stranger to use a personal possession taken from each of the JLAers, something that they did not freely give. So the JLA are jubilant and Felix Faust is foiled. Faust, who is also at Tom Fagan's party, watches from a window as those evil spirits leave his pawns. At that point, the writers burst into the room. They, not knowing who he is, think he wants to kill himself, but in fact he just wants to escape. And he does. He leaps from the window, and it's him that steals Steve Englehart's car. That car has had a really eventful Halloween. As we are used to by now, this is the point where Glynis reappears, initially not remembering what happened, but then memories coming back to her, of wandering through a clearing in the woods and seeing the heroes actually fighting and defeating the evil spirits. As for Felix Faust, he didn't get away. In fact, because of that dodgy muffler on Steve's car, he is pulled over by police, and I don't even think they bother arresting him. So there you go, all done and dusted, and all rather good fun as well. But we aren't really used to that intertwining story structure, are we? So let's see if we can make it a bit more linear. How about this? Our 4 creative types are on their way to Tom Fagan's party in Rutland when the muffler falls off their car. Shortly after that, they give Hank McCoy and Vera a lift, not realising how close they came to their first meeting with the Juggernaut. After parting ways with their hitchhikers in Rutland, the creatives head to Tom Fagan's house. The continuity gets a bit loose here, as we see them make their way to Tom's house on page 2 of Thor, arriving on the same page, and also in JLA, their initial interactions with Tom being a little different in both. The JLA accept Tom's invite to join the parade, which starts straight away in that title, but back on page 1 of Thor. Whilst he battles the Absorbing Man in the woods, the creatives stop off for a bite to eat, and so Glynis can use the ladies, at which point she goes missing. Or does she go missing after the Juggernaut attacks the parade? Whichever. She then turns up fighting the JLA, whilst the Beast is kept busy with Jugs. The creatives, having looked for Glynis in town with no success, decide to head back to Tom's house to continue the search. Whilst there, they decide to check out the many rooms upstairs, stumbling across the Beast and Juggernaut. Jugs then tries and fails to steal Steve's car, before Felix Faust tries and succeeds. As he speeds off, he nearly runs down Loki, and is then pulled over by the police due to that missing muffler. The creatives, now without a car, are reunited with Glynis, who doesn't know what has happened to her, but she is beginning to remember. Or something like that. It didn't actually fit together as well as I thought it would, but they did give it a try. And I'm glad they did. I only stumbled across this crossover by accident after reading that issue of Amazing Adventures and thinking, hold on, Haven't I seen these comic book creators somewhere else in a very similar situation? Then I was off down the rabbit hole. I'm just gutted that the rabbit hole wasn't deeper.